Welcome back, guys. F1 is back once again following another 3-week break following the Miami Grand Prix weekend. F1 now heads to Montreal to race in the Canadian Grand Prix here in 2026. I'm ready for F1 to be back because not only is it the Canadian Grand Prix day, if you are a true motorsport fan, it is also Indy 500 day as well as the Coke 600. So it is going to be a very fun weekend, getting to see three very fun races all on the same day. But we are only here to talk about the Canadian Grand Prix in Formula One. We're going to be making our predictions, and it is going to be a whole heck of a lot of fun. Let's kick things off with our biggest positive surprise. And this week, I'm actually going with a driver who started the season off on about as good a note as you possibly can. Unfortunately, in the rounds since then, has really struggled to get back on, that same level of pace. I'm going with Arvid Lindblad this weekend. He finished 8th in Australia, cementing a very positive start, but unfortunately, back-to-back P14 finishes and a P12 in China has not necessarily seen him quite carry the momentum forward that we might have expected following the Australian Grand Prix. As we now head to Canada, I do think that this is a good opportunity for Arvid to have another good weekend. I think VCARB has really sort of mired around up and down in terms of performance in the car. And I think but they've proven at the same time that if you give them a good setup, both Liam and Arvid are good enough to deliver if given the opportunity. And so I think this weekend we see Arvid finish in the points once again and get himself back on the right side of the points and start to continue this march in his rookie season in Formula One. I think he has a pretty decent shot, and only time will tell if I'm right. Before we move on now to biggest disappointment, let me remind you that we run a season-long predictions championship in our community. We host it over in my Discord, and if you're interested in jumping in and proving that you know more wheel by answering these same predictions, when it's all said and done, we will crown a predictions champion over the course of the entire season, where each prediction gives you an opportunity to earn some points, move up the leaderboard, and have some fun and prove that you know wheel. If you're interested in joining the predictions championship, you can head to the link down below, join the Discord, and leading up to every Grand Prix weekend, I will make a call for these same predictions. And when it's all said and done, we'll crown ourselves a champion. Without further ado, let's go ahead and move forward to our biggest disappointment for Canada. This week, I'm actually going with a team biggest disappointment, and I think it just feels like the natural pick. Williams Formula One team had themselves a double points finish in Miami, and I think that is a very respectable result. At the same time, it definitely took a lot of things to go their way to make it happen, and I think that this weekend is going to be one of those instances where we'll see them take that step back as other teams continue to march forward and have solid weekends. It really feels like Williams needs those breaks to go right to get into the points like this. Obviously, they were there to take advantage, so we have to give them kudos for that. But at the same time, if we see consistent finishes by the top 6 or 7 teams, they really could struggle. And I think this weekend, we're going to see one of those solid weekends for every team. And so it could just be one of those weekends where it leaves Williams fans wondering where those points went when they just saw it last time out in Miami. Let's go ahead and move on now to qualifying for the Grand Prix on Sunday. It is a sprint race weekend, but regardless, these predictions are for the Grand Prix for Sunday. After the sprint race, it's going to be a good one. Qualifying for Canada is always such an interesting track for qualifying, and I'm curious to see how these cars handle Canada's long straights, but also very technical sections as well. Let's go ahead and kick things off with P3 in qualifying. I'm going with Kimi Antonelli. It really feels like Kimi is due for a bit of a misstep. We've seen him convert 3 poles to 3 wins. Very famously, he's taken the lead in the championship over his teammate, and he has been on a fantastic run of form. But there's just something in me, especially Canada, where I know that he went well last year. It feels like there's going to be one of those instances where maybe he's just a half step behind. I don't know. We'll see. He is more than welcome to prove me wrong. But I am going with Kimi Antonelli, P3 in qualifying this weekend. Let's go ahead and move on now to P2, and I am going with Lando Norris. It does feel like McLaren has sort of arrived into the 2026 season. following a very slow start to the season in Australia and in China. They have slowly and steadily made their way to more than likely seeming like they are the second fastest team, overtaking Ferrari and really being able to push Mercedes given the opportunity. And so in qualifying, this is the opportunity, as we've seen Mercedes kind of take a step back in qualifying even and be able to start challenging even more towards the front. Will they be able to convert it to a win? Time will tell. But at the same time, Lando Norris around Canada, I feel like he's going to come in feeling pretty confident. And so Lando Norris for the front row, according to me. As we move on to pole position, I'm going with George Russell this weekend. I know I did this last time out in Miami, and it was not correct in the slightest. But it's just in the same way that it feels like Kimi Antonelli is due for a step back, George Russell is very much due for a good weekend. This is going to be one of those weekends that I think for a lot of people, if George struggles again and Kimi does well again, there's going to be a lot of doubts going on one side of the Mercedes garage. Let me just say that now. But I think George is going to get off on the right foot in qualifying, put it on pole, start on the front row, and we'll see what happens from there. Like I mentioned, it is a sprint race weekend, and who have we seen do very well in sprints, especially recently? McLaren. I'm going with Oscar Piastri to win the sprint race around Canada. I do think McLaren is going to be particularly strong in Canada, and I think Oscar is due for himself a little win here in 2026. And while it might be just in a sprint race, I think he has what it takes to get it done, especially on basically a short scout. I mean, one practice session straight into sprint qualifying and then straight into the sprint race the next morning. It is going to be tight. It's going to be one of those weekends, especially if inclement weather comes through. But I think Oscar has what it takes to win himself a sprint race. All right, let's go ahead, take a look at the weekend when it's all said and done. Our race podium. This is going to be a very fun weekend, and it is giving me vibes, I think. A lot of my predictions this week seem to be based a lot on vibes, and I think a lot of people might be starting to write Mercedes off. I'm turning that on its head. My P3 finish in Canada is going to be Oscar Piastri. Coming off of a sprint win and a lackluster qualifying, he makes up for it in the Grand Prix and finishes on the podium on the bottom step. And I think this is going to be one of those races where when it's all said and done, he'll be happy to be there, because I think the next two are going to be in the league of their own. As we move on now to P2, and I'm going with Kimi Antonelli. I think this is going to be one of those weekends where Mercedes very much does well. We saw it last year. They went extremely well last year around here, and I think we'll see it again. Kimi Antonelli starting a little bit on the back foot in P3 will have the pace, I think, to sort of overtake and finish P2 pretty comfortably, but it won't be enough to take the top spot. The winner of the 2026 Canadian Grand Prix for me is George Russell. I think this will be a damage limitation weekend for Kimi Antonelli, but I think we do see George back on the top step once again. And of course, once Mercedes, for whatever reason, decides to implode this weekend and completely ruin this prediction for me, I will be there to react to it all when it's all said and done. But for now, I just have a weird feeling that Mercedes is going to be really strong this weekend, especially in race pace. And I think we see a 1-2 for them. George Russell leading the way, Kimi Antonelli just behind, and Oscar Piastri rounding us out. All right, let's round things out with a very grounded and based one crazy prediction. This one I was actually shocked to see, and I think it comes true this weekend. My one crazy prediction for the Canadian Grand Prix is that all 22 cars start and finish the race. That's right, there has not been a single Grand Prix in 2026 that has had every single car finish. This weekend is the move. I think it's coming home. I don't know if it's going to be inclement weather that keeps people in line. I don't know if it's just going to be one of those weekends where everything goes right for everybody. But this one I feel like has a pretty decent shot at coming in. The one thing that does scare me is Aston Martin. They've had like effectively 2 months to work on their car with a Grand Prix weekend in between. They do still scare me. They very much are insane still. And so we'll see what happens with that. But I think this might be the weekend. My one crazy prediction, every single car starts and finishes the Canadian Grand Prix. There we have it, guys. Our predictions for the 2026 Canadian Grand Prix are in. We will be back when it is all said and done to talk about what we saw in our race recap. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'm glad we're finally getting back into the groove of F1 being here every week or every other week at least. I know we're going to have a 1 week break in between Canada and was it Monaco, and so that is what it is. But at the same time, a 1 week in between is still a lot different than the 3 weeks that we had this time. So I'm ready for everyone to be back. It feels like it's been gone 4.5 evers. And so we're going to have fun. I hope you enjoyed as much as I'm going to. If you made it this far into the video, I appreciate you. Subscribe if you haven't already, and leave a like on the video. It really helps me out. But guys, that is going to wrap it up for me here in this one. I hope you are ready for the weekend. And until then, guys, I'll see you in the next one.